What's up guys, welcome back to another video, and today we're talking about royalty-free loops and whether or not you should use them. Now before we get started, first and foremost, I do want to point out, don't feel bad if you don't initially understand all of the details of the business side of the music industry, because they can be very confusing and very convoluted. At the same time, however, know that it is your responsibility to understand these things, because at the end of the day, nobody's going to take better care of you than you. Maybe you're a lawyer, but still, you should know these things because this is your money and you don't want to be screwed. Now, towards the end of this video, I'm going to give you guys a resource, one that I use almost every day to reference and to brush up on my music business knowledge, and one that I think that you guys would definitely benefit from. So we'll talk about that more towards the end of the video. But anyway, today we're talking about royalty-free loops. Now, I'm sure if you even dabble a little bit into the production world, you've logged onto the internet and seen other producers sell these royalty-free loops. Now, basically, if you're unfamiliar, it's kind of like selling beats online, but just a few steps before that, because instead of selling finished beats, you're selling melodic loops that other producers or beat makers or whoever can then take, chop up, and make their beats out of. Now, from a business standpoint, this is a very lucrative thing, especially if you're good at making melodies, because much like selling beats online, you can create these sample packs, put them on your site, and then have them be sold over and over again. Now, if you're new to selling loops and samples and just new to the production game in general, the most natural thing for you to do, if you don't know anything, is to see what somebody else is doing and try to copy and emulate. So if Lil Joe is selling loops online and he's labeling them as royalty-free loops, then you might think, well, that's just how the game works. All loops are royalty-free, and that's what I'm gonna do. Now, this is a bit of a slippery slope, because now more than ever, there is such a low barrier of entry into the production world, meaning that now it is easier than ever to become a producer. Ultimately, I'm a fan of this because this means that more people are empowered to chase their dreams. But the problem is that you don't know if Lil Joe actually knows what he's talking about, or if, like you, he just copied Lil Susie and she doesn't know what's going on either. So as you can see, this low barrier of entry combined with a lot of bad information can spread very quickly and then ultimately result in very bad and frustrating business negotiations later down the line. Now, one of the most common scenarios that I've seen is producer A creates a sample pack, labels his loops as royalty-free, and puts them up on his site for sale. Then you have producer B who comes along, likes the sample, so he decides to purchase, especially because he sees that royalty-free stamp and thinks, oh, this is all I'm gonna ever have to pay. Then producer B goes on to make a hit record with those samples, and he thinks he's good because he bought royalty-free loops. On the other hand, you have producer A who's hitting him up, and he's like, hey, where's my split? Because these are my samples, I helped create this record, where's my half? And producer B is left a little confused because that's not what he signed up for. Now, this all stems from not fully understanding what royalty-free actually means, but then the question becomes, is producer A wrong for demanding credit and compensation? In my opinion, no, because producer A actually did participate and contribute to making the record, but the problem was in the miscommunication in the beginning, because had producer A known what royalty-free actually meant, he would have never labeled his loops as such, and had producer B known what producer A wanted from the jump, two things would have happened. One, he would have never purchased the sample pack and avoided the problem altogether, or two, he would have understood that if the record were to pop, he would have had to split things with producer A. So the question then for us right now is, what the heck is royalty-free? Basically, as far as this sample conversation goes, royalty-free simply means that you are only asking for a one-time payment, usually at the point of purchase, and then foregoing or giving up any future payments or royalties. Now, see, this is where I say that the music business gets a little confusing, because there are certain words, certain terminology in the business that kind of overlap. They kind of mean the same thing, but at the same time, they have almost separate definitions, and one of those words is royalties. So let's talk about royalties real quick. Basically, there are three major ones. There's performance royalties, mechanical royalties, and sales royalties, oftentimes also referred to as points. So if you ever hear a producer say, well, I got 3 points on an album, they're saying I got 3% of the retail sales of the album. But let's break them down even further. Performance royalties are paid to anybody who actually contributed to making a record. So if you're a songwriter who wrote the lyrics, you get performance royalties. If you are a beat maker, producer, composer who actually contributed to the musical composition, then you also get performance royalties. And they are collected by what we call PROs, or performance rights organizations. Now here in the States, we have ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, and then over in Canada, they have SOCAN. But essentially, these agencies collect your money every single time your song is played on the radio, on streaming platforms like Spotify or Apple Music, in venues, in concerts, and then usually, typically, they get paid out quarterly. Next, we have mechanical royalties, and essentially these are collected every single time your song is reproduced. Now, it used to be that back in the day, whenever a CD was physically printed, you would get a fixed rate or a fixed amount for every reproduction. Now, things have changed a little bit since then, especially now that we live in the digital era, because now technically a stream on Spotify or Apple Music can count as a performance royalty and as a mechanical royalty. So yeah, it gets a little crazy. And then of course, any digital sales of your music also counts as mechanical royalties. And last but not least, of course, as we mentioned, we also have sales royalties. And again, this is just a percentage off the retail value of the song or the album. Now, this is where the confusion sets in, because most of the time, most producers, whenever they say royalty free, they actually mean free of royalties as long as it's independent. That's not what royalty free means, but in most cases, that's what they're referring to. Now, from a broader perspective, this makes sense, because if you're an up-and-coming artist or producer who's just beginning to build your audience, you're probably not gonna be making a crazy amount of money in the beginning, so it'd be kind of a hassle for producers to chase you down for just a couple dollars. Again, that's just me. Everybody's different. However, nobody in their right mind would ever give up their performance or mechanical royalties, because if that song were to blow and it starts to get played globally in all radio stations and whatever, you're gonna be really, really upset if you gave up those royalties. At the end of the day though, I think it's everybody's fault, but it's nobody's fault, because much like selling beats online, selling loops is still a relatively new thing, and you know, you're bound to make mistakes as you perfect the process, especially because we're all human and we all make mistakes. Now, I'm no lawyer, but my recommendation to you is if you want to sell loops online, never label them as royalty-free loops unless you have the intentions of never receiving any future payments for your creations. The only people who should be labeling their stuff as royalty-free are these companies, these audio and music companies who license out music for like films and stuff like that, where they actually mean that if you purchase their music, you only pay for it once and that's it. And even then, you have to be careful, because some of these companies just want a one-time payment, while others require you to renew a license over a certain period of time. So just make sure you read the terms and conditions and be careful. Now, personally, what I would do if I were selling loops online is, again, one, never label them as royalty-free, and then two, and most importantly, on your website, clearly, where everybody can see before they purchase, include some sort of disclosure or terms and conditions where you state what you actually want. And then it might also be a good idea to include that same disclosure in the actual sample pack, so whenever they download it, they get it and see it for a second time. Now, how that would look like for me personally is I would say something like, all samples are guaranteed clearance, meaning I'm not going to hassle you as far as clearing the samples. If they're being used for independent purposes, then just go ahead and keep your, royalty money. I'm not worried about that. But if it gets picked up by a major label, then we are going to split all royalties, advances, and credit fairly. So you're gonna have to come back so we can negotiate some things. Now, as far as the consumer goes, if you're someone who's purchasing loops, what I would personally do is, before you buy anything, just email the producer, ask him what he actually means. Does he actually just mean that you're only paying for it once and that's it? Or is he requiring some sort of compensation and credit later down the line? And based on whatever they reply, then you're able to make that decision, whether you want the sample pack or not. Now, if you do want to label your loops as something, then what I would do is probably label them as like master clearance or master clearance guaranteed. Now, this is not an official title but it is much better than royalty-free loops. And then, like I said, include somewhere in the pack and on your website which you actually mean, what your terms and conditions are. Anyway, I hope this video was useful for you guys. Now, personally, if I ever sell loops online, just know that my loops will never be royalty-free. They will always be master clearance guaranteed, because I'm a huge advocate of giving credit where credit is due, and then ultimately just doing good business. Now, I know that the business side of the music industry can be very scary, but that shouldn't stop you from pursuing your dream and from always wanting to learn more. Now, I did say that I was going to give you guys a resource towards the end of the video that you guys can use, and that is this book here. It's called All You Need to Know About the Music Industry by Mr. Donald S. Passman. Now, Mr. Passman is a highly regarded, very reputable entertainment lawyer, and I'm not quite sure about this. I heard one lawyer say it once, and if there's more, you guys can, let me know if it's true or not, but I heard that this book is actually used as a textbook whenever you go to school to become an entertainment lawyer, so maybe that's that. But this book literally is like the music Bible. Everything inside that you need to know or might want to know about the music business, it's there. If you're a producer, it talks about copyright, it talks about master clearance on samples, it talks about, producer advances, everything. And it's not just for producers. It also has a lot of stuff for like management deals, record label deals, anything that you might want to know, it's in here. And it's only a couple bucks. So I would say if you're going to get information, this is probably one of the better sources to get it from. So I'm going to link it down below in case you want to check it out. I use this book, guys, every day, and I think you guys would really benefit from it. But that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If this video was useful to you, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not already, but I will see you guys on the next one.